Now, I just want to say that I have no nostalgic attachment to the original Shaman King at all. I didn't grow up watching it, no one around me really talked about it, and it was only until after seeing the first episode of the reboot that I decided to watch the original. So when I say that Shaman King 2021 is pretty awful so far, you can hopefully take that as a completely unbiased view on this anime that came out this spring. So far, we're only 3 episodes into the new Shaman King, so it might be a bit rash to say that there's pretty much no reason to watch the reboot over the original, for right now. I mean, other than the fact that it looks a lot cleaner than the show that was made almost 20 years ago. Isn't that impressive? And I'm not exaggerating that statement at all. Thus far, Shaman King 2021 is doing a bang-up job of being a lazy, rushed, and ridiculous retelling of the same content that you can find in the original, but so much better. Even in areas where the new Shaman King should, by all means, beat out its predecessor, like with its animation, the reboot manages to only stay on par with and even dip below the quality of the show that was made almost 20 years ago. Now, I will say that it's still too early to tell whether the show will be any good, so I've decided to make a full-blown old versus new video after the show is perfectly wrapped up in order to sort out my final thoughts later on. But this most recent episode just pushed me over the edge to get a head start on this race. Spoilers for the new Shaman King, by the way. Episode 3 of Shaman King 2021 is actually the worst piece of media I've ever seen in my life, because not only is the plot of this episode rushed and sloppily handled overall, but it's also terribly edited and put together, making the order of the events in this episode borderline incomprehensible. This episode starts off with the introduction of a character named Anna, who is revealed to be Yo's fiancée in the last episode. I really don't like her personality in comparison to the original's interpretation of her because she comes off as an insufferable asshole compared to the sharp-tongued yet mature and caring person she was before. Like, the first thing she does is toss Manta across the room for basically no reason, and she seems to take everything to an extreme for, again, no reason. For example, in the old version, Yo went along with Manta to get some drinks for Anna and begs for his friend to wait in the hallway for a while before going to see her again. Because he was gone for so long, Anna keeps Amidamaru as a hostage so that he's forced to come back, but in this new one, Yo isn't even gone for that long and she just tied him up based on a massive assumption. This change in character isn't terrible per se, and it's honestly a lot more fitting for the person who wants to make her future husband the Shaman King by relentlessly training him for days on end, but my problem with this is that her new character doesn't even make sense when looking at her character actions. There's a moment where Yo comes to school looking really tired and says that he just got done with his training with Anna, only to find out that Anna transferred into the same class as him, so he even has to train in the classroom too. Then there's a really weird cut to a movie theater and it turns out that the main cast is watching a movie on a famous martial artist, and just ignoring the fact that this is really sudden and out of nowhere, why would Anna do this? Like, she's clearly established that she's a no-nonsense strict trainer who's determined to make Yo the Shaman King by any means necessary, so why would she just go with him to slack off in some movie theater? She's more aggressive in this version, so wouldn't it be more in line with her character to take Yo straight home and get in some more training by the end of the day? In the original, Anna only took Yo to see the movie because she was interested in the death and disappearance of Manta's role model, Pai Long. But in this version, the story isn't even brought up, which is what makes the sudden transition to the movie theater confusing from both a character and narrative perspective. So one of the characters isn't acting like herself at all, and the audience is left wondering why this scene is even happening. And the only reason why the story supposedly makes sense is because Anna just mentions the fact that they were sent tickets from an anonymous sender off screen. And here's where shit really starts to get ridiculous. Apparently, the tickets that they were sent were from June, the older sister of Ren, the guy that Yo fought beforehand. Now, already, this character introduction made me think that I had missed something, since she just appeared and said that she was Ren's brother out of nowhere. But what's also silly is that her plan was to make the main characters go see a movie so that they can witness the power of Pai Long, the martial artist in the movie that they watched, so that she could reveal her main ghost. ghost, which happens to be the mind-controlled, reanimated corpse of Pai Long. What kind of plan is that? Ah, yes, I have an incredible idea. Let's buy these kids movie tickets, which, by the way, she didn't even know Anna was with them, so why would she buy enough for 3 people to... whatever. And let's have them see a movie to show off the power of my main weapon that I'm going to use against them. What's the fucking point of doing that? I know what. The writers needed to show off Pai Long beforehand somehow so that the twist would feel more natural and earned. The way that they did that was the most ridiculous and nonsensical shit I have ever seen. Why would this person feel the need to do that? Why would she feel that it was absolutely vital to not only waste her money on some tickets, but also waste her time by waiting outside of a movie theater for an hour and a half so that she could ambush the main characters when she could have just attacked them on their way home? You see, in the original, it was established early on that Manta was a huge fan of Pai Long, which is why he was the one who brought up the idea of going to see one of his movies, and he also brought up the story behind his disappearance, which is why they went to see the movie after Anna's curiosity was piqued. At this point in time, the villain, June, has been tailing the main characters for a couple of episodes by now, which is why she followed them to the movie theater and decided to corner them there. I don't understand why there was a need to write a ludicrous plan for the villain of this episode to try and execute on. Wait, no, I do understand. The writers wanted to rush through this material and wanted a lazy way to establish both Pai Long as a character and Tao Jun as a villain. Well, good job, writers. You did a fantastic job of botching this very simple, self-contained story. Instead of doing that, they could have saved time in the beginning by cutting out some unnecessary stuff, like scenes of Yo training. What's that? They did cut that out. Yeah, they did. In the original version, there was a training montage of Yo running and lifting weights, which not only established Anna's harsh training methods, but also the fact that she's attending the same school as him in an equally effective way as the new version. In this one, they didn't even show a quick slideshow, they just said it happened, which doesn't really establish anything. I would understand cutting this out if it meant forming a coherent plot later on, but they couldn't do that either, so you're not getting off that easily. Now, everything that I said was a build-up to the fight against June, and it definitely was a fight. It wasn't a very good one. It kind of looked like an old Pokemon battle with the flashing lines in the background and the character doing a pose, except it didn't even have the coolness factor of Pokemon, so it was just bad. I don't really have anything to say about this fight, it just kind of happened. A lot of the emotional undertones of the fight itself were gone too, since in this version they cut out Manta idolizing Pai Long, making his tearful speech at the end meaningless, a shot of Anna showing genuine concern for Yo, and they even cut out most of the animation for the fight as well. And yet another example of poor editing, at one point in the fight, Manta runs off to find a better weapon for Yo and finds Ryu carrying a wooden sword. He hits him on the head with a book and then it cuts away to the alleyway, which I shit you not, after only like 20 seconds, Manta is back in the alleyway with the sword. First of all, considering the position he entered the frame, how did you not see him come back before he said his line? Secondly, they don't even show Manta getting the sword, and he shows up to save the day literally 20 seconds after he got it. This immediately undercuts all of the possible tension of the scenario, destroys the chance of Yo demonstrating his character fully, and it's an obvious indicator that the people who made this just don't care. How did he get there with no explanation? It's not even made clear if that much time passed between when he ran off and when he came back. In the original, Manta tries to get the sword from a random person on a bike, and after he fails to do so, Ryu, who has already been redeemed in this version, rides in to help him out. In the original, you have a very clear indicator that Manta has achieved his objective, and you have an obvious answer to how he gets back quickly. Plus, it takes longer for Manta to get back and give the sword to Yo in the original, and when he does, there's a sick shot of a motorcycle's light overtaking the screen, which cuts to Manta at the center of it. That scene was so awesome, but in the new version, we got this. And then there's the resolution. You see, in the original, Yo freed Pai Long from Jun's control at the end of the fight and then protected Jun from an understandably angry Pai Long. At the end of this fight, Pai Long is turned into a natural spirit, but he finds that he can't pass on because he still wants to perfect a martial art technique that he was working on. So he asks to stay with Jun so that he can accomplish his goal. In this fight, Jun was redeemed after seeing the error of her ways in an honestly pretty forced bit and decides to accept Pai Long's offer, but without the whole mind control thing. And all of that happens in the new one. Except for the last part. Instead of Jun making the active choice to view Pai Long as a friend rather than a tool, Pai Long is the one who has to tell her, hey, I don't like being mind controlled, so don't do that. That kind of undermines the whole point of this fight, don't you think? It makes Jun's character arc feel even more forced, which it already was in this version, kind of, considering how the fight was shortened by a lot, which led to inevitable cuts in Jun's dialogue. Whatever, who cares? It's absolutely baffling how terrible this episode was. I never thought I would get to a point in my life where I would watch a single 25-minute episode of something and be so infuriated that I felt the need to write 3, almost 4 pages about how bad it was. Even more surprising since, again, I never watched the original Shaman King until after I watched this one. I guess I really got attached to the original while watching, which just goes to show that the old Shaman King still holds up today. Anyways, the 3rd episode of Shaman King is terrible. I hope it gets better and can do the source material justice, but this 3rd episode is the worst, and I just wanted to rant about it for a while. Thanks for listening to me, and I'll be going now.